Today, I'm recommending a newly released thrilling disaster movie. The film not only showcases the culture and scenery of Paris, but also delivers a deep commentary on an environmental issue closely connected to humanity. A research vessel is sent to the North Pacific to conduct an ecological survey. Sophia, the female lead, is in charge of the mission. Their objective is to track a tagged gray-blue shark. Little do they know, everyone on board is about to risk their lives. Sophia uses sonar to scan the area and quickly discovers that the target is approaching. But what she sees is shocking. Because the shark hadn't been observed for some time, it has somehow grown from 2 meters to a staggering 7 meters long. One team member decides to tag it again. He slowly approaches the creature and fires a tracking device toward it, but the 4 divers are subjected to a vicious attack. Without hesitation, she grabs her equipment and prepares to go in and help. But the moment she enters the water, she is horrified to discover the diver's severed limbs floating around her. The shark, entangled in a fishing net, bursts out of the darkness and charges straight at her. The shark then drags her straight into the depths. Sophia's eardrums rupture on the spot. She cuts through the fishing net wrapped around her ankle, finally giving herself a chance to escape the abyss. With barely a breath left in her lungs, 3 years later, everything has changed. Along the banks of the Seine in front of the Eiffel Tower, 2 young men are playing a fishing game. On their first attempt, they retrieve something far more alarming, a military shell. The police are immediately called to the scene, and the truth is soon uncovered. The shell had been left behind since World War II. Besides the one they recovered, the authorities discover another 154 shells nearby. Meanwhile, Sophia has changed careers. She now works as a guide at an aquarium. But on her way home, she is suddenly stopped by a young woman named Mika. Mika introduces herself as a member of an independent marine conservation organization dedicated to protecting marine life and the environment. During their routine monitoring, they unexpectedly detected the tracking beacon belonging to the same gray-blue shark from 3 years ago. But something is deeply troubling. The shark has somehow left the ocean and is now heading toward the Seine River. Mika contacted Sophia because she believes Sophia's experience could help them lure the shark back into the ocean. Sophia finds the idea unbelievable. Sophia finally opens the computer she had kept locked away for years. When she activates the shark's tracking beacon, she is stunned by what appears on the screen. The gray-blue shark really is in the Seine, and it's swimming directly toward the heart of Paris. It seems Mika and her team were right after all. Sophia follows the tracking beacon to the riverbank. Normally, a gray-blue shark shouldn't be able to survive in freshwater. Alone, she arrives at a homeless man's shelter, but there is no sign of the man anywhere. Suddenly, a small dog begins barking frantically at the river, as if its owner has fallen into the water. Sophia's instincts immediately tell her something is wrong. Then she receives a phone call. The river police have recovered a body from the Seine. The river police are responsible for patrolling and managing the Seine, so Sophia immediately heads to the scene. The victim turns out to be the homeless man who disappeared the previous night. But there is something horrifying: the lower half of his body is missing. The police suspect that some kind of large creature may have attacked him, so they call in Sophia, a former marine expert, along with Mika, who has extensive knowledge of marine life. After examining the bite marks, they can almost confirm it: the culprit is the gray-blue shark. Sophia reports the situation to the police chief and recommends that they immediately close the water gates and eliminate the shark. But the chief doesn't believe her. Instead, he decides to send several officers into the water to investigate. Sophia and Mika both warn that this is extremely dangerous. Using the tracking beacon, they quickly pinpoint its exact location. 3 fully armed police officers jump into the water. Because river water is much murkier than the ocean, visibility below the surface is limited to only a few meters. At first, the officers don't believe there could actually be a shark down there. But before long, they sense a powerful presence moving through the darkness. Meanwhile, Mika watches anxiously from the shore. She is afraid the officers will hurt the shark, so she secretly contacts her conservation organization. She tells the glasses-wearing girl to use her hacking skills to disable the tracking beacon, allowing them to hide the shark's location. At the same moment, Sophia suddenly loses the signal. She confronts Mika and demands to know why she interfered with the operation. Mika explains that she did it to protect the shark. She also intends to rally more people to join their cause. Sophia is completely speechless. Protecting marine life is one thing, but this particular shark is now a direct threat to the people of Paris. Meanwhile, the officers report their discovery to their superiors. They argue that Sophia's advice should be taken seriously and that the threat must be dealt with immediately. The police chief, however, is faced with a major problem. A swimming event for the upcoming triathlon is scheduled to take place in the Seine. Athletes and journalists from all over the world are expected to attend. The following morning, the police chief takes Sophia to meet with the mayor. But after hearing their warning, the mayor remains completely unmoved. He says it will be the river police who are held responsible for the failure. Realizing that there is no way to change the mayor's mind, Sophia, the police chief, and the others leave angrily. Since the highest authority has refused to shut down the Seine, they decide to take matters into their own hands and eliminate the shark themselves. But just as they are preparing to act, an emergency arises. The glasses-wearing hacker who previously disabled the tracking signal suddenly arrives. She reveals that she has reactivated the beacon, and what she sees is alarming. The shark has entered Paris's underground water system. That night, Mika arrives at the underground reservoir with a large group of followers. Her plan is to use sonar equipment to guide the shark back toward the sea. At the same time, Sophia and the police are rushing to the location. They make their way through a long underground tunnel before entering what is famously known as Paris's Empire of Death. There is only one narrow passage leading out. That means if anything goes wrong inside the pit, escaping quickly would be extremely difficult. By the time Sophia and the police arrive, Mika has already entered the water with the sonar device. Sophia immediately urges her to come back. The shark could attack at any moment. And sure enough, while they are talking, a fin suddenly emerges from the water. But then another one appears. There are two sharks, a large one and a smaller one. Sophia realizes the horrifying truth. The gray-blue shark has given birth, which means Mika's situation has just become even more dangerous. But incredibly, Mika ignores all the warnings and actually reaches out to touch the baby shark's head. She insists that there is nothing to be afraid of. Everyone watching is completely stunned. For the moment, it seems the sharks really aren't attacking. Then one of the officers jumps into the water to pull Mika back to safety. But Mika stubbornly refuses to leave. And then, in the very next second, everything goes horribly wrong. The ground is already wet and extremely narrow, causing several people to lose their footing and fall into the deep pit. Chaos instantly erupts. The water soon becomes stained with blood, and the cramped underground chamber turns into a slaughterhouse. As the situation spirals completely out of control, the officers instinctively draw their weapons and open fire on the sharks. But the bullets have almost no effect. Now, the narrow exit becomes everyone's only hope. Everyone desperately tries to escape, but the panic causes people to trample one another, resulting in even more casualties. Hospitals across Paris are overwhelmed with injured victims. The tragedy could have been completely avoided, but once again, people underestimated the power of nature. Afterward, the police conduct a full investigation at the underground pit, and they discover. The investigation reveals something new. When Sophia discovers that one of the shark pups has already died, she begins to suspect that there is more to this creature than they initially thought. She takes the shark's body back for further examination, and that's when the truth finally comes to light. The gray-blue shark was able to survive in freshwater because its body had undergone a series of mutations. Somehow, the mutated creature found its way into the Seine, ultimately causing the disaster that Paris is now facing. But when the researchers cut open the shark's stomach, dozens of tiny embryos suddenly spill out. This makes no sense. How could a shark that was seemingly alone be carrying so many offspring? Sophia and the police chief once again visit the mayor and explain the seriousness of the situation. But the mayor still refuses to listen. Instead, he angrily accuses the river police of being completely incompetent. Sophia finally loses her patience. To prevent widespread panic among the public, the mayor then goes on television and announces that the supposed shark does not exist. He even claims that the 12 people who died several days earlier had nothing to do with a shark attack. According to him, the only thing everyone should be focused on is welcoming the upcoming triathlon. The river police have no choice but to consider giving up. That's when Sophia secretly approaches one of the most capable officers and urges her to rally the others. If they simply allow the shark to remain unchecked, tomorrow's competition could turn into a catastrophe. After thinking it over, the officer agrees to follow Sophia's advice. Soon, the entire river police force reaches a unanimous decision. They will take matters into their own hands and eliminate the damn shark. The mission is extremely dangerous, but as police officers sworn to protect the public, how could they simply stand by and do nothing? Following Sophia's plan, they divide themselves into two teams. The first team will enter through the previous access point and descend 30 meters into the underground pit. Once they reach the bottom, they will swim through a roughly 20-meter-long passage leading to a sealed underground catacomb. There, they will plant several explosives. Using sonar, they will lure the shark into the catacomb. Once the shark is inside and remains stationary for a moment, they will detonate the explosives. The resulting collapse should block both entrances, trapping the shark inside with no way out. Meanwhile, the team will escape through another passage measuring approximately 80 meters long, which eventually leads back into the open waters of the Seine. The second team will remain on the river's surface. One of the team members lights a flare to improve visibility. But the moment he does, he realizes that what they attract isn't just one shark. There are hundreds of them. Within seconds, one of the team members is torn apart. The remote detonator is still in the fallen officer's hand, and they need it to activate the explosives. One brave officer swims back to retrieve it. But just as he grabs the device and activates it, the sharks catch up with him and tear him apart as well. Sophia realizes the explosives are now counting down. She grabs the last surviving officer and desperately swims toward the exit. Just as the two of them escape the catacomb, a massive explosion erupts behind them. Meanwhile, Paris is preparing to host the 2024 World Triathlon Championships. Thousands of spectators gather along the Seine to watch the event. Journalists and athletes from around the world have arrived, creating an enormous and spectacular scene. The mayor steps out before the cheering crowd, fully expecting the event to become one of the greatest achievements of his career. After delivering an enthusiastic speech, he fires the starting pistol. Hundreds of athletes immediately dive into the Seine. They're full of excitement, completely unaware that death is already approaching. About a kilometer away, the second rescue team successfully picks up Sophia and the surviving officer. Everyone assumes the mission is finally over. But Sophia isn't convinced. She dives back into the river and follows the same underground passage they used earlier. She wants to make absolutely certain that the exit has been completely sealed by the collapse. When she sees that the passage is blocked solidly by a huge pile of rubble, Sophia finally breathes a sigh of relief. But the relief lasts only seconds. Fortunately, Sophia and the officer manage to survive and desperately climb onto a floating platform. But then something strange happens. The shark doesn't continue attacking them. Instead, it swims directly toward the triathlon. A few minutes later, the festive competition suddenly takes a horrifying turn. One athlete disappears beneath the water after a dull impact. Then another scream rings out, and then another. More and more competitors begin vanishing beneath the surface. By the time the judges finally realize there is a shark in the river, it is already too late. The horrifying sight shocks everyone. Spectators begin screaming and running for their lives. Chaos spreads throughout the riverbank as more and more people are killed. What was supposed to be a celebration has become a full-scale massacre. The mayor is so terrified by the carnage that he literally wets his pants. At that moment, the military forces providing security finally spring into action. Highly trained and remarkably calm, they open fire on the shark, unleashing a barrage of bullets. Dozens of World War II shells are still lying underwater. Then one of the shells finally activates. The chain reaction triggers a series of devastating explosions. Massive waves surge through the river, sweeping across everything in their path. As the floodwater crashes toward them, the police officer desperately grabs onto Sophia and holds her tightly. Meanwhile, the mayor can only watch helplessly as the raging water swallows him. After an unknown amount of time, Sophia and the officer miraculously survive. But when they finally regain their bearings, they discover something strange. The place they've managed to climb onto is actually the roof of a building. Then, a shark fin slowly breaks through the surface, and then another. Soon, countless dorsal fins begin appearing across the flooded city. Among them is one enormous fin. Sophia immediately realizes the horrifying truth. The original gray-blue shark didn't die. And when she looks around, an even more terrifying sight comes into view. The entire city of Paris has been flooded by the overflowing Seine. All the floodgates and water control systems have apparently failed. The disaster is now completely out of control. And that's how the story ends.